Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Irvine International Academy Board meeting. This is the first board meeting of the calendar year 2023. Hope everyone had a fun and safe holiday season. Happy New Year, happy Chinese New Year here upcoming as well. Joining us just at this particular location, I'd like to confirm the address. We are at 4782 Karen Ann Lane, Irvine, California, 92604. Joining us telephonically, I believe we have Chairman Doug Hewson and Miller. Doug, can you confirm that we are located at Faith Mission 290 Control Road, Del Rio, Texas 78840?
Yes, I am, and pleased to be with everybody.
Great, thank you. And then Miller, can you confirm that you are at 22737 Holyrood Avenue, Maple Ridge,
Yes.
Columbia?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those that are present, we'll take roll call here. Those are on site at the school. Brett Freeman is present. Dr. Jolene Smith, not present. Mr. David Sun.
Present.
Mr. Felipe Delgado.
Present.
And Ms. Molly Chang.
Present.
Welcome to you all. Okay, so for the next item, we'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance. For that, we will stand and put our right hand over our hearts. Don't see a flag.
No flag. Covered.
Flags at the front of the
Yeah,
building that
flags.
way.
Okay. Would anyone like to lead, or shall I lead?
Yes.
Okay. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please sit. Thank you very much. Okay, our next item is related to approving the order of the agenda. Does anyone have a motion that can be raised at this time? Any changes to the agenda? Otherwise, we will need a motion to approve it.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda as it.
Any second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
Mhm.
Do you have a nay?
No. I say yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the order of agenda is approved. Moving on, we don't have any closed session items. Nothing to report out. Mary Beth, any public comments at this point? No public comments. Moving on to the next item, information items. Two points. One is the executive director report from Dr. Bean, and the second will be the fiscal update from Delana Jones. Dr. Bean, would you like to go first with your executive director?
Yes. Yes. Are you guys able to hear me?
我用，我举你个。
Are you all able to hear me?
我会找。
Oh, Miller, could you mute
Yes.
your mic real quick? Yeah, Miller, could you mute? Thank you. All right. Can the board at the physical location hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Forgive me being in the car. I'm in downtown LA trying to drive home from a training all day today and stuck in this traffic. So I'll be obviously giving my report by telephone. So with the help of Mary Beth later on when we get to the item, the SARC approval. So a few items on the executive report. One is our enrollment currently is now at 236 and growing every day. So big kudos to Sai, Mary Beth, for really just increasing that enrollment significantly. So we're at 236, very happy about that.
Yay!
I don't doubt that we'll be well over 240, close to 250, even within the next month. Also, we are currently in open enrollment, so we're going to be hitting an advertisement campaign here very soon to direct people to our website. And our website alone is actually driving a lot of interests. We at least get 1 or 2 people emailing us from the website each day. And they come in. Today we had 4 people tour. They come in for tours, and Sai does a great job hosting them. And many of them are inquiring about TK, kindergarten, first grade. They really appreciate the full day kindergarten. That's the next item of business. Is we are now in full day kindergarten mode, and our parents are very appreciative of it, as well as prospective family. So that's a big celebration itself. The other item I wanted to talk to you about is I'm in communication with OCDE as well as our attorney to address OCDE's questions regarding our material revision. We turned that in December. We had a successful public hearing.
Dr. Bean, can you hear us?
He's driving.
Yeah, he lost his voice.
That's to approve our request for 7th and 8th grade. So we'll have a middle school next year, and to drop the language requirement around PE. So those are the couple of major revisions for that. And then we're in negotiation with IUSD around renewing the facility use agreement. It should be that we just got pretty much their final draft. We are reviewing it, and then should have a response back to IUSD, and then we'll be able to renew our FUA. Update on fundraising. We have raised nearly $25,000. So we have about $100,000 left to raise. We're going to be doing a big push for Chinese New Year. And hopefully we'll get close to that 125,000 mark. As you already know, the Larry and Helen Oak Foundation already generously gave us a 125,000 matching grant. So we've already gotten close to 25,000. And so we will be able to get the 100,000. And then update on, let's see what else. I think that's about it. We are actually going to start in February, beginning planning for the next school year. So once we get a better understanding of where we are with enrollment and the lottery that happens in March, and then OCD's decision around 7th and 8th grade, that will help us then to start pre-planning for the class configuration, staffing, and our budgets for the next school year. Later on in the meeting, I'll talk about our SARC report, in which I'll share the performance data that should be always included in the SARC report. So that's it for my report, and we're doing, things are going very, very well. So I'm really pleased with what's going on.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bean. I know you're driving, so just for your convenience, it says on here, report on CASP results, SBAC.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna share all of that in a SARC report.
Okay.
So it's not redundant. Yep.
Great. Thank you very much for that update. Okay, moving to the next item, fiscal update with Mr. Delano Jones. By chance, is he on?
He said he'll be online in 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. I suppose we carry on and we can come back to him once he joins. Okay, for the next item, it's related to the consent agenda items. We have one item here. The board will consider the approval of the December 15, 2022 board meeting minutes. Can we get a motion to approve the December 15 board meeting minutes, unless there are any changes that anyone would like to propose? Any changes to the December 15th?
I don't see the bill myself. So I'll make a motion that we accept the December 15th meeting as it. The minutes, I'm sorry, the minutes.
Okay. Mary Beth, do you need to take a roll call vote or all in favor, aye? Any opposed?
Doug goes around.
Okay, so we'll vote by name. Molly?
Oh, did anyone second?
Oh, yeah, fair.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Thank you. Molly?
yes.
Molly's a yes. I'm a yes. David?
Yes.
Everything?
Yes.
Doug
Yes.
and Miller?
Yes.
All right, all support, all in favor? It passes.
Yay.
Mr. Jones, thank you for joining us. We just passed your item. Can we go to your
Give
item?
me like.
Or you need some time? Okay,
Yeah, it was
no problem. Okay. Next item is the discussion action items. The board will consider approval of the 2021-2022 school accountability report card. I don't know, were there any public comments on this that we need to disclose at this point, Mary Beth, do you know? No. So.
Okay, so yeah.
Dr. Bean.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Mary Beth share it on the screen. And I know you have a copy of it in your board packet.
I do.
So-
Delano, Dr. Bean Delano just joined us, so he will be presenting his portion.
Oh, you want to do Delano first then? That's
Yeah.
fine.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'll turn it back to the board then.
Okay.
Just let me know which one you want. So you want me to check register?
No, do the financials first.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go back and do the fiscal update by Mr. Delano Jones.
How do I make that bigger? If you can see that. It's a
Yeah,
miracle.
the board members have their own copy, so here
Oh,
you
you're perfect. Is there a way I could squish it with my hands and do it like that?
you can.
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can,
Yes.
It's so good to join you guys in person. Apologies for being late. Quite a bit of unexpected traffic, I would say, from the south today, few accidents and whatnot. All right, so let's dive in really quick. You guys are looking at December financials. I'll line up a couple of things for you guys because one of the things as you go along that I want to go back and revisit, and I'll do that next month, is sort of give you a little bit more understanding on revenue flow. So that way it'll be much more clear, right? Because I want to show you guys a couple of things. Even though we're halfway through the fiscal year, school started late August, somewhere in there, correct, right? You know, so expenditures tend to flow a little bit differently, right? And as well as your revenues. Even though we're 6 months in, you're looking at 6 months, some of these percentages are really about 40% of, you know, what we anticipate spending. Some of them are a little bit higher as a result of things that have come in terms of expenses, et cetera, et cetera. Let's look at the revenues for just a second. If you look at your revenue limit source, we received 1.4 million from your LCFF funding. That's that very top line on there. So the way that this works is that you get roughly through December, roughly 45% of your revenues for that line item up through December. Then there's a true up that's based on your ADA as of P1. So if you hear me talk about sometimes, hey, look, you know, we want to make sure that at P1, our ADA is reflective and true. And then there will be a second true up again in April, right? And that's the one that's official for the year. That's the snapshot that we use for all of our revenues. So no matter what I have in that right column, that far right column that says budget, that's really just an estimate, right? And it's based upon certain factors that we've included in there in terms of the number of students, the ADA, you know, the attendance rate at which they come. That's, you know, those actuals are predicated on that to some degree. But here's the trick part. That's from last year. You're being paid on last year's enrollment in ADA, right? So that true up is going to come in December. And if you recall, this year's enrollment is lower than last year. So what you're going to see is this flip, and we're going to get less revenues in the back portion of the year, right? But it's going to flatten itself, even itself out. The same will ring true when we get into next school year. And if we have more enrollment, it's going to be based on the lower enrollment from this year first, and then it gets trued up on the other side of it, and then we go forward. So it really takes about, if you can see that pattern, roughly about, I would say 18 months before you really realize the true revenue from where your enrollment is. As we go along on the federal side, which is that next number down, if the state revenues trickle in, what is the worst than a trickle? I don't know. I don't know what's worse than a trickle. It's like molasses, right? It's one small drop at a time, if I could put it in that context. They're much slower. Because what they do is the federal government tend to have you do reports, then they pay you, right? More reports, then they pay you. More reports, and they pay you. So there's this pendulum that's swinging back and forth. I report something, they pay us. I report something, they pay us, right? But it only happens quarterly, right? For the most part. And so what you will see is, a little bit will come in this quarter, then 3 months later, a little bit more will come in. And then by the end of June, we have a huge receivable that's still out there for the federal revenues. And again, part of that managing cash becomes now this issue because, our expenses are pretty much, they're static. They're going to stay the same for the most part throughout most of the year. But we're not getting as much in revenues. And that's it for a new school. Those are the if you will, the tight spots, or where the rubber meets the road in terms of, how do you manage? How do you keep all of this together? Local revenues, most of that is your special ed revenues that are there, along with obviously any donations and grants that have come in to the tune of $206,000. Your total revenues as of December, 1.7 million. Again, as you can see there, our total revenues for the year is about $2 million. I'm sorry, $3.7 million, not two. Let's talk about a couple of things that we can control on the expense side, right? And you look there, you'll see our salary, $671,000 for certificated salaries. And when you hear me say certificated, I'm talking about your teaching staff, your credential folks, your classroom teachers, Dr. Bean, et cetera. Those are your certificated folks, right? $671,000. Not bad in terms of where we are year-to-date budget-wise. And again, that's one of those things where as we go along, there have been certain positions that have not been filled, others that we filled later on, things like that, some that have left, so there are a lot of moving parts in the year with personnel. And if any of you worked anywhere, you will know that is the norm in just about every business. You have some people come on, you have some people leave, and you have others replace them, others you don't fill, things like that. So you have this fluctuation up and down with your salaries. But for, in this case, it's for the good for the school, because we're not over budget on our salaries like we were, say, a year ago, things like that, where we had far more people working here. On the classified salary, that excess is because, again, there's in the early part of the school year, I didn't anticipate having certain positions, and again, we paid out a couple of folks out of that line item. But that will flatten itself out as we get into January, February, because we won't have, let's just say, almost a month worth of hourly expenditures that are not currently captured here that will be captured in January, things like that. Benefits are pretty stagnant. The benefits are what they are. So that's, those are the amounts that we've paid thus far. And those are all based on percentages, things like that. So your total personnel expense, 1.2 million. And again, you can see that we're under, that's roughly about $70,000 or so in terms of the difference between our total personnel costs and our year-to-date budget for that same line item. And personnel is usually the biggest piece of our expenditures anyway, right? If you were to net just the salaries and the benefits, as you can see, that's basically almost 80% of what we received thus far in revenues have gone to just personnel things. On the program side, and I call this the program side, and I will always say this as the program side, because this is where most of what Dr. Bean and what the school does goes into this category, which is your books, your materials, things like that, things that make the school work, right? So we're 217,000 there. As you can see, our budget call for us to be roughly about 220,000 again. Sometimes that's hard to gauge because in the early part of the year, you may spend more money, and then on the back end, you don't spend as much depending on when you order things. Services and other operating expenditures. And so this one's a little bit tricky because this one speaks to operational matters, right? As well as some things that are school related. A couple of things in here that I want to highlight to you. Legal fees, put a big red highlight on that. These numbers are rolled up, but I can always send you the stretched out things, and I probably will do that so that way you guys can see some more of the detail as to, hey, what are the high numbers in here, right? And I'll tell you now, your legal fees, they're, we're gonna have to bring those back under control a little bit because they're quite excessive, and so they're causing a lot of what I would see. It's difficult to plan for legal fees, right? Because you never know. It could be something very quick, or it could be something that's drawn out, right? In this case, so that's one of the big ticket items that it's in there. I will send you guys. And I will bring it next time. It's a little bit longer detail in terms of what's in these rolled up line items. I try not to give you, that much, get you in the weeds that much, but sometimes it's necessary to see what some of those big ticket items are. So that way you're aware of where things are in terms of, things that you're approving. Other IGO is only $512. Most of that's just depreciation. Your total expenses, as I mentioned, $1.93 million. And again, here, if you subtract our revenues from our expenses, and again, is this perfectly normal for this time of the year to having only received, let's say, roughly mental math here, about almost a third of your revenues versus having, almost a lot more in expenses come through. So in most schools, and in fact, I would say this, all schools at this time of the year, they're operating in a deficit. Right. And if you were to see that month over month, you will see it will be that way until we get to the end of the school year. It's just par for the course in terms of how revenues flow in. At the beginning of the month, we had 427,000 in cash. At the end of the month, we had 831,000 in cash. And I do want to highlight a couple of things here as well. So we're getting a lot of restricted cash that's coming in, as I mentioned, with that pendulum swing. There are a couple of state revenues that came in that are pretty big ticket, but we can't spend them until we develop those plans, and Dr. Bean will be bringing those forward. And you have multiple years in which to spend them, but the state gives you the money now and say, hey, well, we'll give it to you now. You guys will figure it out. We just want you to be able to report on it. You have 5 years to spend it. If you spend it in 1 year, great. If you're spending over 5 years, then that's fine as well too. But nonetheless, they give you the cash now. We restrict it. And I'll show you that when we look at the balance sheet in just a second. And in fact, Mary Beth, if you could flip to page 2 for me. I only like my computer. Sorry. How do I move this out the way? I could never operate anyone else.
Oh, it's not.
See, it's not a touch screen. Perfect. All righty. So as I mentioned, we had roughly page 2. If you're looking at the balance sheet, you can see in the treasury, the county treasury, we have 2 accounts. We have a county treasurer account, which is where most of your revenues flow from the state, federal government, things like that, right? That's the bank account that we have there. And then we also have our operating account with Cathay Bank. So normally what we do is we transfer the money out of the treasury because you can't really pay bills or do anything there. It's really a one-way street for us. So we will take money out, put it into our operating account, which is the Cathay Bank. So the net of those two is about $850,000, as I mentioned. We had some receivables of $21,000, $14,953, and then another amount of $21,407, prepaid expenses of $50,000, total assets of $918,000. On the liability side, and thank you, I think I got it now. As I mentioned here, if you go down to that account that says 9650 unearned revenue, see that we have about $500,000 that's sitting there. We have the cash. But again, I can't book those expenditures out to offset this liability here until we've actually incurred those expenses. And that's because, again, those are highly restrictive dollars. with certain amount of strings attached to them in terms of plans that have to be developed and things like that. So until that's done, there's no way for me to actually unrestrict that or code it anywhere else other than there. Our total liabilities of $877,000. You subtract out our beginning balance from last year plus our net loss of 157,000 through December, puts our total net assets at 41,000. Again, that's going to fluctuate back up as we close the books in the year and add back in our net income. A couple of things that are going on right now that I really want to, and let me pause here for a second. I know I've said a lot, and a lot of this, you know, I want you guys to digest it, and obviously there are questions, we can certainly get into it. As we finish up this year, there are a couple of factors that are coming that I want to update you on, things that have happened and transpired already. So we've paid back most of that after school from last year, right? And obviously that's cash that's gone, that's not coming back, right? You know, so that's going to impact us in terms of cash flow and things like that. Also, you know, this year's, you know, because there's low enrollment, right? You know, we have to make sure that the plan that we have for fundraising, the plan that we have for giving and all those other types of things that, you know, the Gale and things like that, that those things are going to come to fruition, because they will impact the bottom line, because we're counting on some of those line items to actually come to fruition to offset, you know, some of the things that have transpired last year as well as this year as well. But overall, the school, you know, from a fiscal, you know, or if I would say from a if you will, a solid perspective, the school's doing great. You know, it's, you know, we're settled down, you know, it's nice and quiet, right? And I believe the staff will be able to tell you more so than anyone else. What I mean by say when it's nice and quiet, you know, this is how you want it, right? This is what you want, to be able to do your business, operate your school in the way that you see fit without the outside noise, distractions that have taken away your focus from the great things that are actually happening here. I will pause there if there are questions on the December financials, and I'll bring up the check register. You guys can look at that, but I will take any questions if you guys have any.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
What is the line, can you explain the line item 9370 cash out by other location resource?
So because we're doing fund accounting, and so a lot of times what we're doing is we're taking, if you will, things that are unrestricted, that had an unrestricted balance or had a restricted balance, and we're offsetting it. So sometimes we're paying, you know, if you will, this is, in this case here, we had cash that came in for, I'll give you an example here, like something restricted that came in, say Title I. You don't have Title I, but just something in general like that, right? If we haven't reclassed anything to it, it's going to stay into that unrestricted bucket until we reclass the fund balance. So you will see this fluctuation up and down every month with that. If you notice that, it will net to zero, because it's just whatever was on the unrestricted side versus what's restricted is just nets to zero there. So it's a net zero calculation, if you will. And it's really just to classify all the restricted items that we do have, or revenues that we do have, versus things that we have that are not restricted.
You know, the 9642 loans payables.
90, you said 9642?
Yeah.
9642. Yeah.
Loans
So
payable.
yeah, so that one is so back in 2000 when the school first opened, that's a liability, by the way. The school had the school got $250,000 loan from the state of California. It's really for a startup money. It's intended for that, but because the doggone thing comes so late, you know, the school's already open and functioning. So it's a loan that the school has. It was initially $250,000, and we've paid it down now to $197,000.
And what's the term of the loan?
So it's relatively an interest-free loan. I think it's so the terms are 6 months at, I think it's like 1.5%. It's relatively interest-free. It's a state loan, very low interest. We pay 6 months and those payments are roughly about 9,000, somewhere between 6 and 9,000 per month for 6 months. Then you don't pay anything else, and then the next year, so it's over
It's rolling.
over 4 years we'll pay this off, yeah. Mhm. It's very low interest. I don't think you will find another loan out there anywhere with those terms. They're almost crazy. And then the compensated absences that you see there, that's just our vacation liability for sick and vacation liability.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
For the net income,
Mhm.
budget remaining.
On page one?
190K in your cash flow statement. So it's just 190K, so is that? You're projecting to be 190K in the positive by the end of this
No,
year?
you wanna look at that column inward, one column in the 32,000, that's the net income. So basically what's remaining is just subtracting the deficit from the budget. That net income from the budget, I believe. So in other words, in order for us to get to 32,000 positive, right, we will have to get net income of 190,000 by the end of June.
Okay,
Right, yeah, if I could explain it that way. But the
Okay.
net income that we're aiming for is the 32,000.
okay. So then the local revenues. We have at the 607 with 401 of that in remaining, budget
Mhm.
remaining. Is
Mhm.
that 401, that includes the fundraising activities? Is
Includes
that
it,
right?
yeah.
Is that the 350?
Yeah, what the total fundraising amount is, I believe, right around 350 there. I believe it was 200,000 and 100 from PTO.
250
Yeah.
for.
Mhm.
Okay.
And some of that, yeah, I believe you guys we're starting to collect some donations. I believe Mary Beth and folks have started sending some of that in. So it's coming in. I believe you have a sign out front with a ticker on it.
Yeah,
So short answer to your question, Brent, yes, that's what that
okay,
is.
thanks. And then the after-school reimbursements.
Yes.
Have those, does this statement, December 31st include?
Yeah, you
all of those
won't,
that
you
have been
won't
paid?
see it, you won't see it on the income statement. It's more of a balance sheet transaction. Because basically what we're doing is we're hitting the 9,500 liability account and then cash. Because basically what we're doing is just saying, hey, look, we booked this liability here at the end. If you recall, in the audit, you saw that we had a line item as a
Yeah.
potential liability. So we're just eating off against that with cash. So when a parent comes in, say this Michael's a parent, says, hey, I want my, I don't know how much those are, it's a lot of them. Right?
Yeah.
Couple $100, give or take, right? I want my $300. We offset against the cash against that liability.
Did we already budget for that? Is that what you're saying? We already?
Yeah, it's
certified-
not, we booked the liability at the end of last year. So yes, it's there. It's not a budget thing because it's a more or less just a balance sheet transaction. So we're not impacting the income statement at all with this. Because it's something that's happened already. So it's not something that we're gonna
Right,
put
but
into
the
the
cash is coming out of an account.
Yes, the cash is coming out, definitely for sure, yes.
It's coming out of.
Yes. So you will see the cash will come out of one of your 90 is, come out of your 9220, which is, I'm sorry, your 9125, which is the bank account. And then that liability down here. Of 39,000 and change.
Is that reflected? You're saying it's not reflected. I mean, we're not considering it one of the expenses.
Yeah, it's a balance sheet expense, right? So it's a liability, right?
Yes.
So you see
But-
that. So
but
if we were to,
Is it being reflected here, I guess?
I
Is it
can't see.
In the cash flow?
Flip
the
it over.
cap-
Let me see what you're
restricted
looking at.
Cash flows. Total services and operating expenses. I'm just wondering why.
Would not see those transactions.
Okay,
The only way you'll see that. It's built into each number here,
okay,
right? So it's a liability. So at the end of the year, we had accrued, it's down net or something because we paid quite a bit of it out. So let's just say it was 100,000.
yeah,
Right, and so over the course of the last 4 or 5 4 months or so, we did this and this.
And did you say
Cash.
this? Okay,
Yeah, and then so you lower that, and obviously that.
okay.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, one more question.
Mhm.
So the physical year coincides with the calendar, right?
No,
No.
fiscal year is
The
July
ends of
1,
July.
July
July
1
1,
to June 3rd.
I got you. So that's what you,
Yes.
because I heard that you mentioned the local revenue, 400,000, something, 400,000 as a law for June 30th, June 30th. right?
So by
Okay.
June 30th, that is the goal,
That's a goal. Yeah.
is to have, so everything is true come June 30th, right? So meaning that on that day, and obviously there are runovers, right? So we can,
Right.
we can accrue things if it's committed to you by that day, things like that. But everything as of June 30th is the official final. But your attendance, and keep this in mind, as I mentioned before, April 15th is the snapshot they take for your attendance, right? So if all your kids decide, and obviously this doesn't happen, but if they all left on June 16th and never came back, it wouldn't impact you for that year, right? Because, the snapshot is taken on the 15th. After that, it doesn't really impact, obviously it impacts learning because you miss all that time in school. But for fiscal reasons or for, budget, things like that, it doesn't impact after. So just a little tidbit, but.
Thank you.
But there's a lot going on here, as you guys can see, there are a lot of moving parts with this. But as we go into this, some of these things will come to an end. Obviously, some of these liabilities will go away. And I'm hoping that as I look over to the ladies here, that we've pretty much gotten all of those folks taken care of for the most part. And then obviously that will be done with. And then once the other things are settled up, then we should be on much more what I would consider smoother pavement, with some of our, liabilities or things that are sort of, on here that are not even on here yet, that I know will be coming on here down the road. And obviously when you guys are in closed session, you kind of know what I'm talking about there. Let's look at, if there are no more questions on the balance sheet or the income statement, you can look at the check register really quickly. Thank you, Mary Beth. Roughly 341,000 in checks were written in December. Obviously for payroll purposes as well as other things. And again, here, same thing apply. If you see something that looks really out of order or something that's questionable, you can certainly, and again, remember, these are your financials, so you guys have, every right to see documentation and support and things like that.
Anybody have any questions or?
Real quick.
Mhm.
So there's a check here for Alex Granger.
Mhm.
Is that one of those reimbursement checks?
Yep.
That's a
This one looks like it's a reimbursement. Who's Alex?
Some music.
Oh, yeah, that's a reimbursement, not
That's
related to.
But I noticed there's no more reimbursement check.
You should have seen,
The issue with
the after school program.
There's none.
Should have seen November's.
Yeah, I saw November.
Yeah. And you will see, I think, when did I do them again? January? I think it was like early January I did them. Yeah. And you'll see it again in January. Yeah, you'll see quite a bit more in January. I think I had like 80 checks that day, and that was quite a bit. I was like, my hands were tired. I was like, so yeah, you'll see those, a lot more of those in January again, because we did them in batches, and I believe they would give them, and your staff has done such a wonderful job with this thing, in terms of babysitting it. So they got the first batch in, the second batch, and I don't think there's a third yet, maybe 5 batches. Oh geez, you're counting there. There you go. So just a couple of notes as you guys looked that over, and I mentioned a couple of things that are coming down. So in January, the governor releases his preliminary budget for next fiscal year, right? Which starts on, to David's point, July 1. So he sends that out, and then right around May, he will revise that and send out a second iteration of that budget. And then hopefully by June, the legislature will sign off on whatever that budget is. A couple of things are going to happen between now and May, right? So we'll have, obviously property taxes, income taxes, all those things will be, corporate taxes, all those things will be collected between now and April. That will give him an idea of what resources are looking like for the state. Right now, we're short 22 billion. He has a way of making that up, which is usually take the knife out and just chop, 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 right? And that way. He's promised not to underfund K-12 education. That was his promise. Don't hold me to it, hold him to it, right? He's promised not to, but that doesn't mean that between now and May that he's not going to have other issues that he may have to make some deals with. And, maybe education will, and it happens, right? Politicians typically will say, hey, I'm not going to do this thing, but then at some point they have to change their mind for other reasons, right? And it's natural. But he said he's not going to. And I anticipate that with all the things that have happened with the economy last year, that's going to impact this year's budget. There's an 8% COLA, which I know he's going to have to cut. There's no way that the state is going to be able to just add 8% to everything. I don't see it happening. It'd be great for school, yeah, because you'll get an additional 8% on top of, your revenues. But I don't think it's going to come to fruition. And one of the things I don't like to do is to set you up for a disappointment, which is say, oh yeah, we're going to be flush with cash because the state has, boatload in reserve, but this is a big state. Right. And so, it's quickly we can go through that reserve just like that. Right. If you look now, we've had weeks, about a week or two of heavy rain. That's going to cause some issues in terms of expenses that are going to come from that. Right. Things like that. But I just want to set the table with that, saying, as we get into the next couple of months, that's when I start to look at things budget wise and how it's going to impact here. So that way, when we start to build this budget, we're armed with enough information to make an informed decision, right? And so we'll do that. I'll continue to update you on some of these things, and then, we'll sort of see where they go. But really in January, we sort of get that first look at the budget. Not necessarily bad news, but not great news either. And then we'll see what happens come, say about April or so, once we start to see some of those cash receipts for the state comes in, and then we'll sort of take it from there. And there's about 5 months left before we have to bring a budget forward here, but obviously that work begins now.
The question that would
Yes.
impact this school year,
It would impact next
Next
school
school
year. Yeah. For the most part, next school year, because it's kind of too late. He did make some cuts in September, which did impact, but it didn't impact K-12, things like that. But what I'm speaking of now will definitely have an impact on next year, which is why next year will be key for this school in terms of enrollment, and having a solid program. Obviously, if we have the middle school in there as well too, that would be great in terms of just having all the grades covered. And now you have a rock solid school that's feeding itself, from the front end all the way through. So
Another question for you. I know that you mentioned that you're considering the ADA of the 216, and the more students you add and the further in the year, the less impact it makes.
yes.
I guess I'm wondering, when will we know what the increase in enrollment, what type of impact it will have had on this year, based on where we are now?
Yeah, so so it's kind of tricky to do it. We would have to sort of pick a point in time and say, hey, let's say as of this date, but you have to take into consideration. So as an example, we know what your P1 ADA is, right? And it's safe to say that you may have added some students in there that's been here a couple of months. I don't, and I'm guessing, right? And it's probably safe to say that after you guys are back in school now, did you guys add any new students? So they just started maybe a couple of weeks ago, right? How many just, oh, geez, 10. That's a pretty big number, 10 new students. So you're only gonna count them for, what's this month? January, February, March, and those 2 weeks there. So you're talking what, 9 to 11 weeks, give or take in there. And that's if they come every day, right? And they may get sick and not sure, so it's hard to give you a spot on number until they actually have captured all of that in April. But there is, you have a software through Measure Ed that sort of gives you guys, ADA on almost like on a daily basis, right? Yeah, so we could look at it and see what it looks like. But again, there's not much we can do about it because, our snapshot, we're waiting for one particular day for that number. So any numbers that you have now is almost like meaningless to me because I can't do anything with it until it's official. But I'm hoping that it's, to your point, that it's more on the higher side. But then obviously we know that we still have to wait another almost 6 to 12 months after that before we see any real, the real true up from any increase ADA.
Couple of additional questions regarding the chips.
Yes, sir.
Out of all these checks, how many that really belongs to budgeted items and what items are extraordinary items?
So if I were to, everything on here is a budgeted item.
Okay.
I will say that because, so David, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. Here's why. Were you here in June? I think you just came on like right around that time. Yeah.
July.
Yeah. So right in June, who was here in June? One person. No, you were not here. So Brent has the distinct honor of approving the budget that we're operating under, right? And I believe we did a revised budget actually later on. So everything that you're seeing here, are tied to that budget in terms of those expenditures, right? We try very hard not to have any, and Dr. Bean can attest to this. We try hard to not get into a place where things are unbudgeted, right? And it happens, right? Something may come up and it's an expense that we never planned for. It happens all the time. A pipe may break in here or something, right? But we try very hard not to get into that. We try to anticipate as much as we can. You asked about big ticket extraordinary items. Let's see here. Payroll is pretty standard. If you look at December 7th, those 2 amounts, those are payroll amounts. So you can always send you can tell their payroll because they have that SMR hourly, SMR salary right there. And they don't have a check number per se. Right. So that's your payroll. You in here, if you look down on 12/15, you see that $23,000 check to the Department of Ed. So they accidentally paid us some money that did not belong to us. And this one even gets a little bit more complicated because then they took the money back and then they sent us a letter saying pay it. And so then we paid it. So now they have to give us the money back. Yeah. So it's, so it's going in circles there. So that one, as I mentioned, you can see here the legal fees, that's just 1 month of that. Your health insurance, as you can see there, Kaiser down towards the bottom, 13,000. And you see more payroll there as well. So
What is the speech and pathology?
yeah, so that one, that is for your special education. So you have some students here who in their IEP, which is their individual education plan, they have certain specialists that are needed to support their learning. And so in this case, Helen Wu is the speech pathologist, and she's contracted to provide speech therapy. Yeah. And you will see from time to time, there'll be a number of those. You may see some for occupational therapy if that, if a student requires that, things like that, maybe hearing and vision screening, you'll see some of that, things like that. And see if there's anything in cell that sticks out. And again, you have more benefits as well. Credit card. That's about it. Let me see here. I'm looking for the lease payment. I think I may have paid it in January. And you don't see that one on here, but also another big ticket item that you will usually see quite a bit is your lease payments to Irvine Unified, which is about $27,000 per month. Let's see what else. And another one is cross country education. Anytime you see that, that's also special ed as well. So as I go along, I'll try to identify some of these that you guys can readily see. Cross, it's towards the bottom there on 12/20 when I wrote that check. So anytime you see that there, and then, oh yeah, go up to 12/15 Revolution Foods. So that's for the lunch program. So that's always going to be a big ticket item as well too. Lunch, the cost to provide lunch to the school. And that was for November. December, you would be pretty small because you guys were out a couple of weeks, right? And then they'll pick back up again. Pretty standard. Like I said, most of these are, what you see, all of these are, Dr. Bean, just to kind of give you guys a flow of the process here, because you guys don't necessarily see this every day. So, the team here works on the coding and getting it all together. Obviously, Dr. Bean approves all of this, to your point. Even though it's already approved in the budget, there's that second layer of making sure that every check that we write is also approved by Dr. Bean. And obviously you guys get to see the check register here, which is then another layer, another step in that fiduciary, responsibility that you guys have, fiduciary responsibility that you have and I have in protecting the assets of the school.
So question for you, if we are working with an outside vendor and we have a contract and that contract expires, do you build in the budget a continuation of the contract assumption, or you just look at what the liability is based on what the contract states?
So in the case like that, that's when that work with Dr. Bean would be key, because then we'll go through the budget, and you guys don't see this, but we go through the budget line item by line item for those specific reasons right there. So let's just say you have a contract that's expiring and we get to that line item and I know what that contract, we know what it is, and I'll say, hey, is this something that's going to continue? Oh no, take that out. We zero it out. We move on, or, and so it will always come back here, because there's always the, what Dr. Bean and I do comes here for approval. So there's always this secondary piece of it. It's not like, we could, let's just load in with everything we want and the board's going to approve it, because then it still has to come back here with those pieces carved out, i.e. a contract for, services and things like that. Usually you will see those separately, even though they're in the budget, but for transparency purposes, we want to make sure that you guys are seeing those separate.
Thank you.
And same with employment agreements, obviously, right? But I try to be as transparent as possible across the board. Because this is, again, like I said, these are all public documents anyway, so there's really nothing that I can hide, and I don't want to hide anything from you guys. I want you guys to be able to see everything, understand as much as possible, because you make better board members and you make better decisions that way when you're informed, right? Any other questions on?
So anything
Yes.
recurring, all some of the recurring expenses are all contract based, right? Contract.
Yes, for the most part, yes. Like with me, it's a contract. With Helen Wu, as an example, the one that we just mentioned, there's a contract. Even your teachers, right? There are all contracts there. So it's very little that happens around here that's not on the contract base, right? Your books and things like that. Obviously, you have an invoice or a purchase order or something like that, something you can trail back to. But for the most part, most of the most of the things here are contract related or tied to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Awesome.
Jones. Appreciate it.
Perfect.
Okay, Dr. Bean, are you still with us?
Yes, yes, of course.
All right, thanks. Okay, coming back to your item, this is the discussion and potential consideration and approval for the 2021-2022 school accountability report card.
Yeah.
Would you like to provide some background on this, please?
Yeah, so it is not required that the board approve the school accountability report card. However, it is good practice for executive director to present it to the school board. And in this case, allow you, you guys should accept it as a report that is due every February 1st school year. This report will be the first one we do because it is based on the prior year's school year data. And so as you have hopefully have been able to review it for the last few days, there are certain sections in this report that are important for this board to keep in mind as we report it. This state report card goes to the California Department of Ed, but also is physically linked into our website so that the public has access to every school's SARC report. Mary Beth, go ahead and scroll down to probably keep going, probably page 4. This is just background information. There's a narrative on our vision on page 3. This is our student enrollment on page 4 from last year. So go ahead and keep scrolling. This is our breakdown in ethnicity groups. As you can see, a majority of our students are Asian. We do have about 19% that identify as 2 or more races. We have 47% female, 53% male students, and this is last year's demographics. Keep going. The next section is called conditions of learning. So this is where we talk about fully credentialed teachers and whatnot. As you can see, there's NA because we didn't have a school year in 2021. But this is the district. And when we say district, the district is actually our authorizer. So that's Orange County Department of Ed district numbers. So as you can see here, they have 87% their teachers are fully credentialed. They had about 1.7% that were teachers, they were credentialed teachers, but they're assigned out of field. They had 2.8% of teachers without credentials and they're misassigned. Those are numbers that if we compare them to the authorizer and then the state, go ahead and scroll up, please. Now here you'll see our numbers for the school year 2021 to 2022. We had 9 fully credentialed teachers that made up 82% of the school teachers. We had 1 that held intern credential. And then 1 was a credentialed teacher, but we considered assigned out of field because this particular teacher came from another state, did get a multiple subject credential, so she's properly credentialed, but she worked on getting what we call a bilingual authorization. So I'm sorry, scratch that, not bilingual authorization, but authorization to teach English learners. So because she did not have that authorization to teach English learner, we had to consider her as 1 teacher that was assigned out of field. And so therefore 9% of our English learners did not have a teacher that was properly credentialed last year. All right, keep scrolling. So again, that's where table 10 shows that class assignment, misassignment for English learners. Keep going. This is 8. This talks about what our textbooks currently are this school year, when it was adopted, and how many % of students lacked that particular curriculum. As you can see, 0% lacked the particular assigned curriculum. meaning that 100% of our students had access to our curriculum in all of these areas. Go ahead and keep scrolling. The next page 9, this is based on the facility inspection report that our authorizer does. And this is the ratings that they gave us in each of these systems that were inspected. A good rating. Keep going. They did, make one slight note for us to do. And then the overall rating in this FIT report that Orange County Department of Ed gave us was exemplary. And that was done in October. Keep scrolling. So here in the next section is the pupil outcomes. So this is important because this is where we report our CAS data. Go ahead and scroll up. And as you can see here, table 15, this is our ELA, English Language Art score. 68.67% of our kids met or exceeded. Compare that to our district, 34.62. Compare it then also, 29.4 if we compare apples to apples, year to year, and then compare to the state. So we had 66.67, and then the state had 47.06. In math, you can see that number, the disparity in that number is even more so. 82% of our kids, nearly 83% of our kids met or exceeded in math. The district level only almost 14%, and state level 33.38%. So as you can clearly see, based on the CAS results, our students far exceeded district and state numbers. Keep going. Table 16, it's the same thing, but now it's broken up by subgroups and based on how many of the students took the test. So obviously we want 95% or greater of our students taking the test. And as you can see here, broken down by student group, which groups tested, which groups had lower percent not tested. Scroll down. This is, go back up a little bit. Oh yeah, and this is in math. Scroll down, same thing. Students taking the test versus students not. Okay, keep going. This is our science results. So our students, 84% of them met or exceeded versus the district 21.9, and then the state's 29% in science. Keep going. This is, again, the same thing, but for science, participation in the science test. So 100% of our students took the science test. Keep going. This is not applied to us because these are more secondary schools. That's why I put NA. Page 17. What was the percentage of our kids that took and participated in these 5 components of the fitness test, the California Physical Fitness Test? 100% of our students did. Okay, go on to the next section. And then this talks about, scroll back up. Can I stop right there? Okay, this is our chronic absenteeism by student group. As you can see, if you look at it by student group, we see that our Latinos, even though 16 students, we have 16 Latino students, 25%, that had 25% chronic absenteeism rate. That's pretty high. Even all students, 15.4% chronic absenteeism rate. That's pretty high. We want that to be under 10%. So as students are consistently attending schools and are happy with schools, we hope that they stay in school. Now, this could also be because of the pandemic, of course. So this is the first year. Last year was the first year students returned. And we had that huge peak of the variant, Omicron, in December, January. So most of these numbers were probably impacted by that. Scroll down. School climate, that means like expulsion and suspension. Keep going.
Dr. Bean, what's considered chronic absenteeism?
So chronic absenteeism is like habitually absent. Like if you're absent for, you know, a day or two, that's fine. But if you have one student who's repeated absence, then they're called chronic absent.
Just
And
probably
so,
days, right?
so if you can see, all students, 55 of our students were chronically absent. And I believe that's like 3 or more days unexcused absence. All right, and this is suspension. As you can see in table 29, we had 1.3% suspension. That means like we had versus the district 1%. So we're a little bit above the district and below the state. And what this is for every time a child is suspended, you count how many days they're suspended, and then you do some kind of formula, which I don't know at the top of my head, but this is all numbers that are reported to us by the state, because we give this number through PowerSchool. So PowerSchool gives how many students are absent because they're suspended, and then the state gives us the number that you see here. So ideally, we want this to be 0. We don't want to suspend any kid, frankly. But so we want to get closest to 0 as possible. Keep scrolling. Expulsion obviously is 0. We didn't expel anybody. Keep going. This is just a narrative of the safety plan that we did. So I just typed up a narrative. Keep going. Those do not apply. This one right here, you know, the average class size, the state wants us to report to our stakeholders and families how large our classes are. So as you can see here, we had 3 kindergarten classes between the size of 31 and 32. And that's just an example of one of many. We did have one first grade class that was greater than 33. So that's kind of a big class. But the average for first grade was 30. Okay, keep going. Now secondary, so it does not apply to us. Does not apply to us. Now right here is student support service staff. Like if we had counselors, which these are contracted out, psychologist and counselor, those are contracted out. So we had to give a rough 0.25. A resource specialist, last year you had a part-time resource specialist, so that was a 0.5. And then you had a speech pathologist who probably worked about 50% of the time, so it's 0.5 as well. Scroll down. Does not apply. That does not apply. And then right here is the last one. Just how many dedicated PD days. Last year you had 4. This year we had 10. Because the board gave us permission to start the staff retreat earlier, which was very helpful. And so that's the whole presentation of the school accountability report card. Every school has to publish this on their website and publish it with California Department of Ed. And so I'm just asking the board to go ahead and approve the submission of this. There was one piece of data that was highlighted yellow. I just have to confirm that when the state actually has the data out, as closer to the beginning of the document. Once they have it out, I'll be able to submit it by February 1st, no problem. So I would ask the board to approve this with the minor corrections once the official data has been published by the state. Any questions?
Any questions? Doug, Miller, do you have any questions?
None for me. Wonderful report.
Wonderful report. No question.
Okay.
Oh, one thing I did not say, I do need to say, because I'll have to turn it into the Orange County Department of Ed. We did not reclassify any English learners last year. My hunch is that the former leaders did not have in place a reclassification process or methodology. So this year we implemented that in August, September, what's called the English Learner Master Plan. Our authorizer did see it, review it. They gave some feedback. And so in that English Learner Master Plan is a protocol or process that we can use to reclassify our English learner. So the goal of our school should be to always constantly help and support our English learners so that they no longer become English learner, but they become what's called reclassified fluent English proficient students. And the only way to do that is through doing well on what we call the LPAC, doing well in the school or in the classroom, and then we can reclassify them. So the percent of reclassification rate is 0% last year. And this year, obviously, we will reclassify students. And we're in the process of actually doing the summative assessments now. Once we do that, we can analyze and see which students we can reclassify. But that should be the goal of all schools, to have that English learner reclassification rate, high. And so last year was 0%.
Okay, thank you. So we have a request by our executive director to consider approval of the 2021-2022 school accountability report card with he's gonna make some minor revisions to it. Is there a motion to approve this at this point?
I'll move. This is Doug Hewson.
All right, Doug, thank you for that. Doug motions to approve. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, David. David seconds it. And going around here, Molly. Molly is a yes. I am an I.
Yes.
David is a yes.
Yes.
Felipe is a yes. Doug.
Yes.
Doug is a yes. And Miller?
Yes.
Miller is a yes. Okay, so it passes all in favor. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to closing items. Board member comments. Does anyone have any comments they would like to share?
Oh, I'll talk. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. Can you hear me, Mr. Bean?
Yep, I can hear you.
Hey, first I want to thank Delano for coming in and give us a personal presentation, because it's one thing to watch it over the screen, but it's a lot better in person. No doubt about it.
Definitely.
Also, I think I just want to mention for all of you, for everybody that's here, that next time you see Ruth here at the school, make sure you thank her for the decoration, the Chinese New Year decoration that we have the benefit of as our background here. She was the one who came in today to work on that. Okay, what was that?
Stacy Kong.
Stacy, who was the other person?
Stacy.
Stacy, okay, also, right, who's also a part of that. As far as the, let's talk about donations, okay, I think it was in December, you sent out a letter requesting donations from the parents, and I was just wondering, is there going to be a second letter from you soon?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, there will be. There will be. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, there's going to be a second letter going out right before Chinese New Year break here. So it'll go out on Friday, and then pushing the Lunar New Year, and then a big push will be when we celebrate the Lunar New Year with our students in February.
Good.
因为你来了，
The other thing I was
真
gonna
的，你看我们你不来，我们不在这里出现，所以你看多好。
One thing I did want to mention is an update on the plans for the I'm going to call it the gala celebration. Anybody want to hear about that?
Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Bean, I know you're waiting to hear this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So first and most important, There was never any plan to use any of the school's funding for the gala celebration. Okay, so there's been a rumor kind of going around that they're unhappy that we would be using or potentially using some of the donations that went to the school for the gala, and that's not true. There was never any plan to do that, just so you know. The other thing is we have looked at potential sites for the gala. We looked at a couple of them and we got some bids, stuff. And we are planning to have a meeting with the committee either this week or later this week to go over those plans. Okay, and pick a location, the date. All right, so that's where we are at. I know that sounds kind of lackluster, but there was a lot of work behind it just to get that far. Okay, and so that's where we're at right now, and I'm looking forward to this celebration with the fundraising component in the future. Okay, that's where we're at. All right, guys.
Thank
you very
much. Want to make a few comments. Thank you, Dr. Bean, for the wonderful report card. I noticed in many areas, this school exceeds the district and certainly the state performance. I wonder, you have any data, by comparison, compared to some elementary schools in this area, in urban area, and because we're located in urban, I know, by default, they may not require you to have this data report card, but for maybe the report card to parents, and we want to, show how the kids excel, vis-a-vis other schools in this neighborhood, in this area, might be more kind of a representative. Just a
I'm glad that you asked that because we actually do have 3 reports on the website that compares Irvine International against Irvine Unified School District schools. And for science, we're on top. For math, we're the second highest. And then ELA, we have work to do, certainly. But if you go to our website, we have published that as well as sharing it with the board, I believe, the last meeting. But yes, I think that's a great idea. And comparatively to Irvine Unified Schools, we also do much better in those areas.
That's great. Very confident to hear that. Yeah. All right. I also want to make a comment for Mr. Jones. Thank you for the very detailed financial report. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that. I asked you a lot of questions. So
No worries. I love questions. I love questions.
And so very, very happy to see you in person.
With that type of reception, I'll be here more. And I love that. The whole time I was giving my presentation, sorry. My eyes was back on the wall there. It is really amazing.
Yeah.
It's very, very nicely done. Please.
Really setting the right stage.
Yes, to your point. You have a way with words, David. Yes, absolutely. I love it.
Dr. Bean, I haven't seen you in person. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
I know. I'm sorry. I wish I was there.
All right. I'm sure we're gonna see each other.
Something too. Delano, I just want to thank you for teaching me. And then as you are sharing, I can tell you're not just doing the numbers for the school. I can see that you care, you know about, and give us advice. So it's like a big family, you're part of it.
I love this place.
I just
Trust me.
appreciate that.
I love this school.
And I also, as Dr. Bean explained, going through the report card, and I'm a little bit familiar with some of the terminology you mentioned, and I just, I know that there's so many. Well, you have done a lot of behind the scene work. That's a lot of hours, a lot of effort in there, and I just really appreciate you that you head of the school, and at the same time, educate us, to know more about the school and how to just lift up the school to the best. And we already see the school is excelling right now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So, first and foremost, welcome back, Mr. Sun. So it's great to have you here in person this year. Yeah, I look forward to seeing Miller and Doug when you return, and Dr. Smith as well. Delano, thank you very much as well for coming in person. We appreciate it. It does help. When you're here. Very much. Dr. B, my question for the school accountability report card. So I know we have the LCAP, we have the report card, we have the instructional leadership team. I'm wondering if we have some insight into how we can be on track.
I'm sorry, Brad. I'm having a hard time hearing you. Miller, could you mute, please? All right, go ahead.
Related to student outcomes. This may be early, in that it's mid-year, but I'm looking to, as a board member, I don't know if other board members have this insight or care to know more about this as well, but the intricacies of how we measure ourselves beyond these exam scores.
Yes. Yes, great question.
Because it's one of these things where, for those of us who have kids in the program, we go through the iReady, the kids do the test and their data points, but they don't know how they are tracking, how they should be tracking. There's some information in the iReady, but then you guys as a school can see how the school is doing and what areas we need to improve in and where we need to lean in and provide more resources. And I'm not sure if we have those discussions. You probably are, but it's helpful if you can share that with at least me and the board, I presume for those that are involved, to have more insight into that. Because I think that's very helpful in telling the story of the school. It is more than the test results or these things. It's really about the attention to detail of the overall educational deliverable that we're providing here. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely makes sense, and it's a great question. And we have the answer, and that's right now we're about to start the second round of iReady assessment. And so when that is done, we get together as teams to analyze the data and then make changes to instruction. At the next board meeting, I hope to present to you then now 2 periods worth of iReady data. iReady is an assessment both in math and in reading, and it'll tell us a lot. It'll give us a snapshot of how our school's doing, snapshot of how each classes are doing, and a snapshot of how individual students are doing. And so we can use that data then to prepare them for not only the next iReady, the end of year iReady, but also prepare them for the CAS or the SBAC, and just to prepare them for daily instruction. So yes, that is all a part of the system, the data-informed decision-making that we have at our school. We use a process called continuous improvement process, in which we look at the data. We're going to look at the second round of data, and our teachers will plan based on their class results. And I will gladly share that result with you at our next board meeting.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because me personally, the more that you can share with us about our process here, I think the better it helps to get an understanding of how the children are being stewarded through their education. Because though we have large, in certain classrooms, larger class sizes, we still focus on the individuals, wherever possible. And to be able to speak to, our attention to ensuring we're properly delivering the quality of education that we want.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Doug, Miller, any comments from yourselves?
I'd like to thank Mary Beth and Sai and the entire administrative team for doing the tours with each individual family and being so responsive. Wonderful. I do want to say hello to the other board members. I wish I were sitting next to you. However, I was meeting with the principal of a school, an elementary school in Acuna, Mexico today, and collaborating and sharing great ideas that happen in Irvine International Academy. And he was thrilled to hear what our school is doing. And then we were having the privilege of building out a complete commissary for one school. And then for a school with individuals with disabilities, we were building out a medical clinic for them. That was what I've been up to this last week with a group of 50 men from California.
Well, thank you for your service. And it sounds like you are working hard over there. And thank you for joining the meeting. We appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Brett, for leading us tonight too so well.
We miss you. Miller, any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you for your leadership. You sound like that, on the phone. So thank you for the whole time. And then also would like to wish you all happy Chinese New Year. And then with all the best. I miss the school. I miss all of you. I will soon to come and then plan my trip to come with the celebration of Chinese New Year. And then thank you for the leadership, and also just looking forward for another time.
We miss you, Miller. Happy Chinese New Year, and looking forward to seeing you.
Yes. Yeah, you're always welcome to Canada. We don't have snow. Yeah, we only have rain. So yeah, so always welcome. Okay, yeah. All the best.
Wonderful. Next item, we have our board meeting business states listed here. Any conflicts? I suppose we can circle back with you, Mary Beth, to see if we need to make any adjustments to that. And the last item is to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion to?
I got one more thing.
Yes.
One more thing. I'm not sure if everybody knows from the board, but during the Christmas break, holiday break, we had a retired librarian come into the school and organize our library. Ellen, I forgot the last name. Strasma. Yeah, I should know that. Ellen Strasma is her name. And she came in and organized the library, and so it get a chance to take a look at it because there's a big change there. And she's volunteering here at the school during the day, right? She's here and showing the kids the importance of books and how to use them and all that. So it's a big plus for the schools if we didn't have last year.
Is there a way to formally recognize her and those that helped? Because I think there were a few individuals.
Yeah, Felipe helped too. Felipe and his kids. So he was being modest.
That was our staycation.
Do we have something that we can do to honor those that dedicated their time and effort?
And you know what I was thinking is we could do something on the website. A little thank you kind of thing, maybe some pictures. If we could get some pictures of her with the kids in the session, we could put that in there and add it as part of the news and stuff like that. So I think that would be nice.
Maybe we can do even a news update or something like that. We can write something up for the library. But if there's a way to honor them, also
We call it
a gift card or something, just to say thank you.
we could name the library after something. Ellen. We could put like a Strasbourg.
I don't know. Dr. Bean, are you still here?
I'm here. I love Felipe's idea. Let's name the library after her. So she, clearly gave so much of her time
There you go.
That's how it's done,
Can we,
right?
can
That's how
we
you do it.
defer to you to take care of this and honor her and anyone else who participated? To thank
I
them?
think who could do the webpage?
Well, we can do it. But we just need to write, we just need to write a little blurb.
Little blurb about that, maybe the Dewey Decimal System that
Yeah.
she's using, and just a little something and we'll stick it out, yeah, right?
Perfect. Thank you for saying that. That's great. That's an important update. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? All right, we have a motion from Felipe. Is there a second?
Second.
David seconds, Molly. She's a yes. I'm a yes. David?
Yes.
Yes, Felipe?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Doug?
Yes.
Yes, Miller? Miller, are you a yes or no on adjourning?
Yes,
Yeah, it passes. We're adjourning. Thank you all. For
yes. If I say no, you stay there, right?
Thank you, Mary Beth, Sai, Mr. Jones for driving up. Have a great evening. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And you guys are.